An African country just stood up to the most powerful economy on earth and slapped them with a 75% tax on their steel. A single European leader is holding 103 billion hostage, blocking aid to a country at war because of a broken pipeline, and the entire continent is furious. And while Trump told reporters, "I'm not putting troops anywhere," 5,000 United States Marines just boarded ships in San Diego headed straight for the Middle East. Stay with me because by the end of this episode, you're going to understand these three stories are more connected than they look. Now, let's start with the continent Africa because this story is not getting nearly enough attention globally, and I have to shine light onto it. Now, on March 19th, South Africa did something bold. It imposed steep anti-dumping tariffs on structural steel imports from China and Thailand. Chinese structural steels now faces a tariff of 74.98. Thailand faces 20.32%. These tariffs are effective immediately and will last for 5 years. Now, before I explain why this matters, let me explain to you what dumping actually means in plain language. So, dumping is when a country exports its products to another country at prices so artificially low, lower than what it costs to even make the product, then it undercuts and destroys the local industry in that particular country. It is essentially economic sabotage through pricing. Now, South Africa International Trade Administration's Commission, their official trade watchdog basically, found that about 28,800 tons of structural steel from China and Thailand flooded the South African market in just one financial year. China accounted for 65% of that total, and cheap imports were undercutting South African steel prices by 20%. That basically means local companies could not compete. Now, the real life consequence that South Africa's ArcelorMittal, one of the country's biggest steel producers, was facing, and the sole producers of the main line rails in the entire Southern African Customs Union, shut down multiple plants in Newcastle, Vereeniging, and Mpumalanga. Up to 3,500 jobs were put at risk. 3,500 jobs, real people, real families. Now, China's currently account for 73% of all steel imports into South Africa, and imports make about 36% of the country's total steel consumption. So, South Africa was essentially becoming dependent on Chinese steel, and Chinese steel was simultaneously destroying South Africa's liability to make its own, or abilities to make its own. Now, there is a political layer that makes the story even more significant. South Africa and China are both members of the BRICS, the economic bloc that was specifically designed as an alternative to US-led economic group. Iran is also a BRICS member. South Africa just slapped its BRIC partner with a 75% tariff. That's not a small thing being done diplomatically. It's a huge number. Now, China and Thailand embassies did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The tariffs are still standing. So the question that I wanted to ask is, when an African country has to impose 75% tariffs just to protect its own workers and industries from being wiped out by cheaper imports, what does that tell you about the real cost of globalization for developing economies, right? So let's go to Europe. One man, 103 billion, and a broken pipeline, because that's a lot of money. The European Union has about 27 members, or 27 member countries. Every single one of them, including Hungary, agreed in December 2025 to provide a 103 billion loan to Ukraine to help fund this war against Russia. It was an anonymous agreement signed, done. And then Hungary Prime Minister Viktor Orban changed his mind. Orban vetoed the entire package, blocking all 27 nations from releasing the fund, citing a dispute over a damaged oil pipeline that runs from Russia through Ukraine into Hungary. That pipeline, the Druzhba pipeline, was damaged in a Russian attack in January. Hungary says Ukraine is deliberately delaying repairs. Ukraine is denying this. So here's what makes this even more extraordinary, I would say. Hungary secured an opt-out from paying for any of the costs of this loan. They face zero financial exposure from the package. They're now blocking. They're not being asked to contribute a single euro. They're simply vetoing everyone else's money. The EU leaders arrived at a summit in Brussels this week absolutely furious. Finland's prime minister said he's using Ukraine as a weapon in his election campaign and it's not good. The Dutch prime minister said Hungary's veto is unacceptable. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, said one leader had simply not kept his word. So why is Orban doing this? He faces general election on April 12th. His party is trailing in the polls. His entire campaign is built around being anti-Ukraine, anti-Brussels, and pro-sovereignty. So blocking this loan plays well with his base at home, even as it infuriates every single other European leader. Now, the Ukrainian President Zelensky agreed to accept the EU technical support and funding to repair the pipeline, a major concession. EU leaders are pointing out to that agreement on grounds for Orban to drop his veto. He has not moved. So the parliament have vetoed 385 to 147 to explore overriding Hungary's veto, looking at qualified majority voting mechanism that would allow the other 27 nations to move forward without the unanimous consent. Meanwhile, Ukraine is running out of money. The funds are supposed to be released at the end of February, by the end of February, but that's long past and gone. We're in March right now. Coming back domestically to the United States, the war that United States had no business interfering or going into other than being pressured by Israel. Their own intels are saying that there was no threat from Iran. Trump had posted on his Truth social media, the United States, and I'm quoting directly, getting very close. Okay, getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our military efforts in the Middle East. Winding down. And at the exact same moment the post went live, the Trump administration confirmed it had doubled U.S. ground troops heading to U.S. Middle East, sending an additional 2,500 Marines and 3 warships from San Diego, combined with 2,500 Marines deployed from Japan last week. That is 5,000 Marines now en route to the region. The U.S. military currently has about 50,000 troops already in the Middle East. Okay? 50,000 troops. The president says winding down. Pentagon is sending 5,000 more Marines. Military experts are saying that the Marines could be used to help open the Hormuz or potentially for ground operations. Reports emerged Friday that the administration is weighing a plan to seize the Kharg Island, Iran's main oil export terminal. It's about 20 miles away from Iran's coast. If its loading facility were knocked out, Iran's ability to export oil would collapse almost immediately. So Trump floated the idea that the war could end quickly, but said if the US left now, it would take Iran at least about 10 years to rebuild its military. If we stay longer, they'll never rebuild. So earlier in the same day, he had ruled out an immediate ceasefire in Iran. Iran threatened Friday to expand retaliatory attacks to include, and this is an exact language, parks, recreational areas, and tourist destinations worldwide. The top military spokesman warned that these sites won't be safe for enemies of Tehran. And gas, as we know, nationally is now an average $3.91, up from $2.91 just 1 month ago. Georgia became the first U.S. state to suspend gas tax, saving drivers about $5 to $6 per tank for 60 days. Florida and Maryland declined to do the same. And guess what? The Pentagon has requested an additional $200 billion from Congress to fund this war. That again, I will reiterate, their top intel counterterrorism has said multiple times, and other military experts, Iran posed no threat other than the US being pressured by Israel to join this war. And we know the US national record has already hit a record $39 trillion. Okay, traders have now cancelled bets that the Federal Reserve would cut interest rate this year, and some are even seeing a slight possibility of rate hike, something almost unthinkable before this war began. The Iranian's new supreme leader has written another statement. He released another statement. I want to end this segment at least with a question. If the president is saying winding down and Pentagon is sending 5,000 more troops, Marines, which one do you believe? And what does it mean everyday families here and everywhere? I'll tell you one thing. Stay informed. Share this video with anyone, someone who needs the full picture, and subscribe to our channel. We cover what's mainstream might be glossing over. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.